Hello, everyone. For the next few days, I will be releasing several stories I had the pleasure of narrating for an audiobook. If you want to hear exclusive stories only found in the audiobook narrated by myself and the Dark Somnium, there are links in the description for the audiobook and a physical copy of the book that you can get for yourself.
I ask myself, how did I end up in this situation? While smiling politely with stale crumbs crusted to my lips. How did I end up in this situation? My question has an answer. And the answer is 67 years old. Grandma, bless her heart, has a knack for offering me up in the name of good. Do neighbors need someone to look after their dog? My grandson will do it. A farmer needs help baling hay? I know a strong young man. My great Meemaw passed away and we need help digging a deep hole. Well, have you met my grandson yet? To be fair, the last request has yet to occur. But it wouldn't be surprising if my grandmother knew someone who could fulfill the task. I nod my head along to the words that I don't fully listen to while reaching for another cookie. The cookies on the dingy little table seem to be about as dry as Father Sebastian's personality. I know that. The cookies know that. But the preacher apparently does not. Despite the wane of my smile and the tapping of my foot, the old man doesn't seem to get the hint. But I remind myself that I'm here to help out, so I try to muster up some enthusiasm. My grandmother is a God-fearing woman. She hadn't always been. It was the loss of my mother and my sudden arrival on her doorstep that had rekindled her faith. As a result, we began attending church together, twice a week for what seemed like an eternity. Eventually, as time passed and grief turned into acceptance, we reduced our church visits to once a week, every Sunday. While I fully supported my grandmother's unwavering devotion to her faith, my own enthusiasm for attending every single holy outing was about 45% at best.
Hey, John, mind if I borrow your young muscles? Jonathan, perhaps you wouldn't mind carrying my groceries? Hey, Johnny, are you free for an hour or two after church?
I don't really mind helping out as much as it may seem. After all, it's the neighborly thing to do, and sometimes it even leads to some extra spending money. What it can also lead to is Father Sebastian mentioning that he could use some help pulling out some holiday decorations, and my dear grandma asking if I could be God's little helper. Before I knew it, I found myself crammed into a dingy Ford sedan, driving down a series of dingy dirt roads, and arriving at a dingy old house. There, I found myself grabbing stale oatmeal cookies from a dingy table, while the pastor preached about the significance of the Easter Vigil play the church intended to put on. And where were the decorations for the play? In the basement, of course. Where's the basement? I ask as soon as Father Sebastian pauses to catch his breath. He looks down and I follow his gaze, spotting a trap door beneath the dingy table, covered in a thick layer of dust. My throat tightens at the sight. No vertical stairs, no regular doorway, just a trap door.
Help me move the table real quick,
the pastor says, and I quickly shove a cookie in my mouth to free my hands. As I take hold of one end of the table and begin walking backward, my foot catches on something, and I stumble, loosening before losing my grip on the table. To my surprise, it didn't come crashing down on top of me. Instead, I looked up to see Father Sebastian, his aged face contorted with determination, holding the massive table in place as if it weighed nothing. I'm taken aback, thinking him far too old to be that strong. He looks to be in his late 50s, with a wrinkled face and what may be a somewhat stout build concealed by his robes.
I don't think you need my help moving the table.
I crack a joke as he helps me up. A faint smirk played on his lips.
I need much more help than you think, he replied. But the Lord always seems to provide.
I feel a small chill run up my spine as he grips my bicep. The way he says it gives me an uneasy feeling.
Ha! Yeah, for sure,
I respond, not quite sure what else to say. With the table finally moved, my attention is drawn to something that had escaped my notice earlier. A worn and rusty padlock, fixed onto the trapdoor. I find myself fixating on it as the pastor leaves to retrieve the key. I continue to stare at the padlock, my mind wondering, did I truly know where I was? I had never been to Father Sebastian's house before, and as far as I knew, no one I knew had been there either. My gaze drifts to the window, and I can see miles of empty fields stretching out before me. Miles and miles. Miles of nothing. I take a deep breath to calm my nerves and remind myself that my grandmother knows where I am, and Father Sebastian is a respected member of the community. After all, he's been preaching at the same old church for 20 years, and everyone treats him like family. I reassure myself that there's no reason to be uneasy. Still, the sooner I get those decorations, the sooner I can leave and the better I will feel.
I have the key,
as Father Sebastian walks back into the room with a large key in his hand. His voice startles me back to reality. He inserts the key into the lock, and the rusty padlock falls open with a clank. The dusty trap door creaks loudly as it is lifted open, filling the air with a cloud of filth that makes me cough and take a step back. Peering into the dark hole, my heart sinks at the sight. The first thing that strikes me is the sheer thickness of the door, as if it were designed to keep something in rather than anyone out. The second is a sense of dread I experience staring into the depths of the basement, a feeling that sends a cold chill through my entire body. There are too many things I don't know. Of the few things I do not want to go into that basement.
You stay here,
Father Sebastian instructs, his voice low and commanding.
I'll hand the boxes up to you.
As he descends into the pit, a sense of immediate relief washes over me. I'm grateful that I don't have to venture into the dark basement with its unbearable stench. However, that relief quickly turns to suspicion. Why wouldn't he want me to help him carry the boxes? I shuffle over to the opening and try to catch a glimpse of what's down there. But all I can see is the old man's wrinkled face in the shadows. It sends a shiver down my spine.
I think that's the nativity scene. Could you double check for me?
Father Sebastian asks as he hands me a large box from the basement. I place the box on the ground and reach for my pocket knife to open it.
Nativity scene,
I confirm.
Great. Run that out to the car real quick and come back. I've got more boxes to grab,
Father Sebastian says with a smile. As I pick up the box and head towards the car, another wave of unease washes over me. It's strange to realize that the pastor is my only way out of here, even though I don't dislike him. Nonetheless, I remind myself again that my grandmother knows where I am, and that Father Sebastian is a respected member of the community. Together, we hoist a total of 6 boxes from the basement, some of them heavier than the others. Father Sebastian finally lifts himself from the basement floor, but as he emerges, he falls into a coughing fit that quickly transforms into a full-on tantrum. Excusing himself for a glass of water, he leaves me alone in the room.
Would you mind closing the door for me, Jonathan?
He asks before disappearing. Reluctantly, I return to the trap door and lean forward to close it. The stench, inescapable. As I grip the wood, I feel a sudden shift in my pocket, and before I can react, my pocket knife slips out of my jeans, tumbling into the darkness of the basement below. Time seems to slow as I froze. That pocket knife wasn't just a pocket knife. It was my grandpa's pocket knife, the very same he had given to me the week before he died. He had gotten that knife when he was 8 and skinned his first buck with it. Even though I had never skinned anything with it, it was still my knife all the same. I glanced back to spot the pastor. but he's still on the other side of the house. After a brief internal debate, I decide against asking him for help and swing my legs over the edge to begin descending the ladder into the basement. As I make my way deeper into the bowels of the old house, the overwhelming smell only grows. It clings to my clothes, filling my lungs with every breath, and I can't help but wonder what could possibly be causing such a putrid odor. Finally, my feet touch the ground, and I release my grip on the ladder, the wooden rungs groaning in protest. As I struggle to identify the source of the foul smell, a vivid memory resurfaces in my mind. A recollection of the time I saw my grandfather skillfully skinning a buck. Why did that particular memory come to mind now? My head throbs as I frantically search for the knife. Thankfully, the beam of light from the trap door casts its glow upon the knife, and I manage to retrieve it quickly, finding some comfort in its cold metal. With the knife in hand, I turn to leave, but hesitate after grabbing the first rung. A deep sense of dread washes over me, and something gnaws at the edges of my mind. What in the hell was that smell? I turn back towards the basement and dare to take a few steps deeper into it. As I draw closer, my eyes begin to adjust to the dim light, and I see a shelf looming in front of me. The closer I get, the stronger the smell becomes, causing my head to spin and my stomach to churn. The weight of the stagnant air presses down on me as the stench assaults me. Finally, I stand before the shelf, and the source of the smell reveals itself. Hundreds and hundreds of mothballs, their pungent odor permeating the air. The fumes are almost unbearable, and I instinctively cover my nose and mouth with my sleeve, feeling an immediate sense of relief. I can't help but laugh at myself for getting so worked up, allowing my imagination to play tricks and assume the worst. Filled with relief, I turn back towards the ladder, but then something catches my eye as I turn. My imagination once again. That's what it must have been. Surely it's not what I thought I saw. This far into the basement, the light from the opening didn't quite illuminate, making things harder to discern. But if that was all, why was I so hesitant to turn and look? Slowly, I turn my neck and see a shadowy mass in the corner of the room. The shadowy mass, a dark silhouette, a shape resembling a person. The smell floods my nostrils. "Hello?" I managed to ask the figure, unsure if I could even be heard over the sound of my own heartbeat. No response. With each labored breath, I inch closer, my nostrils burning and my head spinning. It's not human. It can't be human. But then I see the face. Pale. Not. Dead. The chest does not rise. It's a corpse. Terror grips my entire being, and fear courses through my veins as I frantically fumble for my phone in the back pocket, desperate to call for help, to escape this nightmarish scene. But before my trembling fingers can retrieve it, a strong, cold hand clamps down on my shoulder.
"Jonathan,"
it says. I let out a scream of pure terror, struggling to break free from the grip, while instinctively lashing out with my grandfather's pocket knife, turning and plunging it into Father Sebastian's neck. He howls in fury, pushing me away as he tries to staunch the bleeding. But it's too late. Crimson spurts from the wound, staining the air around us as he collapses onto the ground, his outstretched hands now coated in his own blood, reaching towards me. Father Sebastian's arms fall limp, his body racked with 2 final convulsions before he lies still. Gasping for breath and barely able to stand, I stare at Father Sebastian's lifeless body in shock. The stench in the air has grown even stronger, suffocating and overwhelming. My mind races. I need to call the police. I need to call my grandmother. With trembling hands, I reach for my phone in my back pocket, its light illuminating the immediate area. Before making the call, I dare to look over at the corpse in the corner. I dare to look at the victim of Father Sebastian. Jesus Christ. Oh, Jesus Christ! It was Jesus! A life-size depiction of him. The statue's cold, blue eyes seemed to stare right through me, mocking me, and tears began to stream down my face as I realized how utterly alone I am in this unholy abyss beneath the dingy old house.